Hey everybody, welcome to this pre-watch tutorial before our next live session. This is on the topic of MECE, but before I dive into what it is, let's just talk about why this is important. When I was an individual contributor, one of the most important things I had to figure out how to do was deal with the torrential downpour of information that was coming my way. Trying to make sense of all the different data points and pieces of information that people were sharing with me was honestly the hardest part of the job. And what we are building into this program and have borrowed from the world of consulting is this concept of MECE to help you with just that. So let's get into what MECE is. Okay, MECE stands for mutually exclusive and collectively exhausted. So mutually exclusive, here's a visual to show you. These circles would be mutually exclusive. These where there's an overlap would be not mutually exclusive. And collectively exhaustive, this is if this was the data set, these three pieces or groups of data and information would represent the entire data set. This one here missing the green is not collectively exhaustive. All right. It's very important, and I'm going to come back to this point, that you get to decide and define what the data set is. Another way to think about it is with the deck of cards. So the suits in a deck of cards are mutually exclusive. There are no overlapping cards when you organize them by suit. The cards within a suit from ace all the way through king are collectively exhausted. That represents all of the cards that make up the hearts suit. So this is MECE, right? Hearts, if you had a pile of cards, all the hearts, all the diamonds, all the clubs, and all the spades, they are mutually exclusive. There is no overlap between them, and they're collectively exhausted, right? That represents all 52 cards in a deck. This is not MECE, right? If you had a pile of face cards, red cards, and black cards, you would have in this pile, for example, the jack of hearts, which could also go in this pile. So while it might be collectively exhausted, there's 52 cards, they are not mutually exclusive. Pause this video now and think to yourself, is this MECE? The answer is, of course, no. This is not MECE because tech companies could be large enterprises, they could also be startups, and honestly, they could also be small businesses. So there's a lot of overlap going on here. These are clearly not mutually exclusive. They're also not collectively exhaustive. At least we don't have enough information to tell, right? Because there could be other types of companies that are not included in here, but it all depends on what the data set is that we're analyzing. To bring this to life, let's go through a case study where Duolingo defined a data set that helped them unlock daily active user growth. All right, so in around 2017, they started to experience a plateau in their growth. So they tried to figure out what is going on here, right? What can we do about this? They tried a bunch of different things. They tried gamification, and they did a broad gamification push to every single user on their platform, and it just flopped. They tried referral programs. Around the time, Uber was making huge waves with their referral program, so Duolingo tried something similar. Again, went out to all of their users, and I think it resulted in about a 3% change, not moving the needle nearly enough for them. So they went back to the drawing board. Daily active user growth was trending down. They had to figure out something to do it. And here's where MECE becomes so valuable. MECE allowed them to drill down into what makes up that daily active user population to get way more granular and way more specific with the levers and interventions that they could use to improve it. So let's have a look at what that looked like. First of all, they broke down their daily active users into these 7 different buckets. So you've got new users, their first day in the app. You've got people who have been away from the app for 7 to 29 days and then came back, right? Current users are people who are no longer new users, not their first day, but they've been active at least one at a time in the last 6 days. Pause the video now and just have a look at all 7 of these and ask yourself, is it possible for a user to be in more than one bucket? The answer, of course, is no. If you map this out and kind of run the thought experiment, These are very clearly mutually exclusive. They're also collectively exhaustive. The way that they've defined this, there's no way that there's a user that's existing outside of this universe. So this is the very real application here of the principle of MECE, allowing them to break down their daily active users into these 7 mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive groups. So by taking this information, they were able to build a growth model. A person who first signs up for Duolingo starts over here, and on their first day, they're a new user. Once they're active again for another day within a 6-day period, right? If you remember, we go back here, so they're active today and at least one other time in the prior 6 days, then they become a current user. Okay. If they are dormant for a week, then they become an at-risk weekly active user, and at-risk monthly active users, dormant users, etc. There are a lot of different flows here as the passage of time goes along. People can move into these different categories, right? If someone stays active every single day, they kind of just continue to be a current user. And so what they're able to develop here were these reactivation rates, right? So they measure the rate of change of one user going from one category to another. And then because they've always been really, really good at collecting data and doing A/B tests and that kind of thing, they had tons of historical data. So what they did is they looked at the last 3 years of historical data and they saw what the reactivation rate changes were for all of these different permutations. And they mapped out what the interventions were that they could run for those specific subsets of users to see what the impact would be on the overall daily active user rate. And what they found was pretty interesting. The current user reactivation rate proved to be by far the most powerful lever, impacting their daily active user rate over the past 3 years that they were looking at by 75%. In other words, by using MECE, they were able to break this down and isolate this particular metric as the one that they wanted to impact the most. So now they had a story that they could tell, right? So how do we keep current users who've been, right, let's go back to the definition really quick, who are active today and have been active at least one at a time in the prior 6 days. So they're only focusing on those users. How do we keep them coming back the next day? Using this information, they started to run a few more experiments, A/B testing along the way. Leagues and leaderboards was a huge, huge hit. So you would create this ability to compete against your friends. They would also create leaderboards of random users, so you get paired up with 30 other people that you didn't know, and just by doing the thing that you came there to do, right? Just engaging on the app, learning whatever language you were learning, you would get points for that and you'd compete in these leaderboards. And just adding that friendly competition for current users dramatically improved their chances of coming back to the app the following day. Another thing they did was enhancing their push notifications. This was a big one because they wanted to balance spamming people, right, with useful push notifications that they could send out. And another thing that really helped was streaks, right? So getting people bought in to keeping the streak going, that growth loop of current users coming back to the app the second day. These 3 experiments that we talked about made a huge impact on daily active users. By focusing specifically on current users and the growth loop of bringing them back into the app the next day, the daily active users increase quarter over quarter for the next 4 years, making stakeholders, investors, employees, everybody extremely happy. All because they built a more granular understanding of their users using the simple concept of MECE. We're going to dive into how you can apply this in your work in the live session. I look forward to seeing you there.